This is Sports Talk, home to great debates and the hottest sports topics. Now, here are your hosts, Jeremy Farina, Justin Paolillo, and Holden Pirelli.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Sports Talk. I'm Holden Pirelli alongside Justin Paolillo. Jeremy Farina out again tonight due to his commitment on his current football documentary project. Jeremy, best of luck. On to our first topic here tonight. Gino Auriemma recently won his 10th national title with the Huskies women's basketball team. Justin, is Gino Auriemma considerably one of the greatest coaches of all time, or maybe the greatest coach of all time?
This one is a controversial question because a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, it's women's basketball, or it's not as important as, let's say, Wooden down with UCLA." But I think no matter what you're playing in, getting 10 championships is a big accomplishment, and I would consider him an all-time coach. And it's not like he's done this with 6-7 different franchises. He's done this with the UConn Huskies. He hasn't won championships here, then moved to another good situation. He's recruited players, he's coached players, and he's developed players. And I think you definitely have to consider him in an all-time spot. But I like Phil Jackson as the greatest coach of all time right now. But we'll see what he does. I mean, the team's looking good next year with Stewart. She's only a junior this year, and she won the most valuable player. And most valuable player, and Mariah Jefferson's coming back. So the team will be very good next year as well. And I would say if Auriemma could possibly win 15, 14, I would consider him possibly the greatest coach of all time. But right now I'm going with Phil Jackson. But the only what any critics might say about this is, like I mentioned, if it is women's basketball, and I guess you can make the argument that I don't want to say not as important, but maybe it's harder to win in a men's league. But you have to put him in just because of the sheer accomplishment of 10 rings. That's nuts no matter what level, what sport. So I would consider him definitely a top 5 coach of all time.
Yeah, I definitely consider Gino Auriemma one of the greatest coaches in basketball history, frankly, across any level of sport. I mean, what he's done at UConn is truly a dynasty. If you think about it, he has 10 titles. He's tied with John Wooden. He has 5 more than Coach K at Duke. We'll get to him later in the show. But, 10 titles is 10 titles. And the fact that the women today in college are required to stay all 4 years and they can't declare for the draft after 1 year like the men in college could. So we truly get to see the effect Gino Auriemma has on his players as a coach. We get to see players develop across 4 years. Not only is he successful on the college level, he's also been successful with the national team. And he's won consecutive gold medals being the coach of the women's national team. This guy is just a workaholic, and he puts in the work, and it's paying off. He's having tremendous success, and he's relatively young. I think he can get to 20 if he wants to. He could get to 20 titles. And UConn is just so much better than the rest of the field. Like, they beat Notre Dame by 10.
And that was the hardest
in the
game
national
of the tournament.
game. And that was the hardest game of the tournament. They beat Texas by 30 in the tournament. They're just leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else, and that's just a testament to what kind of program Gino Auriemma is building at UConn. And I would definitely consider him one of the best coaches of all time.
And another criticism you could say against this is, look at the competition he's going up against. Notre Dame's a good basketball team, but they still beat him by, 12, 10?
Yeah.
And that was their hardest game, like we mentioned, Holden. And, even in the Final Four, what did they win by, 30?
Yeah.
That's another argument. Maybe the competition isn't as great as, let's say, Coach K and Duke or Boeheim up at Syracuse. That's another argument to the situation. But
the type of players he brings in, it's not rent.
And think about it. They got guys. Right. They got girls who were in high school sophomores. I think there's even, I heard of a middle schooler who's already committed to UConn.
Right.
So people want to come play here.
Right.
So and you could credit to that to the coach who a lot of the top female athletes want to go play for him.
A lot of these coaches have great things going for them to recruit kids. They're in good locales, California, warm weather, Miami, like these nice locations to recruit people, whether on the pro level and free agency or at the college level. Gino Auriemma is in Storrs, Connecticut. It's not technically a tropical location or a place you really want to go to, but that's just a testament to what kind of great coach he is. He's recruiting kids to come to UConn and play for him. And that's just a testament to his excellence. And look, the players he recruits aren't like the players John Calipari recruits at Kentucky that are all Americans, 5-star recruits. Most of Auriemma's recruits were under-recruited or not as highly recruited or highly commended as these other recruits that are going to schools like Notre Dame or South Carolina. Breanna Stewart wasn't, I believe, even in the top 10 in their high school class, and now she's the best player in the country. So that just speaks to how good of a coach Auriemma is, that he can maximize player potential.
It's another aspect of it that's sometimes overlooked because people just look at the specific stats.
Right. Well, moving on, Coach K and the Duke Blue Devils recently won another national title. That makes it 5 for Coach K. Justin, is Coach K another all-time great coach for you?
I definitely do think Coach K is an all-time great. I would say in the men's game, winning 5 championships is a big deal. I mean, you look at it, Michael Jordan won 6, so it's only one less than a guy like Jordan. And I know we're talking about coaches, but anytime you win that amount of championships, it is a big deal. And again, Coach K is a great recruiter. I mean, Duke University is a great school. Everybody wants to go there. And they do get a lot of talent coming in. But Coach K is a great coach, and he's won plenty of gold medals coaching the USA basketball team in the Olympics. And overall, I think this guy's definitely has to be considered a top 5 coach of all time, if not top 2, 3. And I think eventually, if he can, maybe grab 2, 3, even 4 more down his career, keep winning those gold medals, I think he could be considered an all-time great in the basketball nation.
Right. I definitely believe Coach K is one of the greatest coaches in basketball history, just like Gino Auriemma. Like Gino, Coach K coaches the men's national team and is really behind their revival. I mean, I remember in Athens in 2004, they only came away with the bronze. It was a huge disappointment. Then Coach K stepped in since Beijing, and they've riddled off championship after championship, gold medal after gold medal. So he's definitely turned that program around. And at Duke, 5 national titles, especially in men's college basketball, which is far more competitive than women's college basketball. And this guy is a great recruiter, like you said, Justin. He's always bringing in great talent. You just look at his track record of guys who have went on to the NBA from Duke and how much success they've had. Grant Hill had a great career, though he was injury-plagued, but no doubt he had skill and won a lot at the pro level. Kyrie Irving, Luol Deng, Carlos Boozer, these guys at one point or another in their career were all-stars and went along to have great careers. Jabari Parker still has to write his story, but I think he'll have a great career, and I think guys like Jahlil Okafor, who have yet to declare for the draft but soon will also have great careers.
Guys like
J.J. Redick. Yeah, J.J. Redick. I mean, there's just so many talented guys to come out of Duke, and a lot of those guys that we think about stayed at Duke for 1 or 2 years, 1 year at the minimum, obviously, but they've developed at the program, and Coach K is a tenured coach, one of the few coaches to have over 1,000 wins. So that's just a testament to his excellence.
Yeah, Holden. I think I really like what you said there about the fact that you look at what he's done to players who've had successful not only college careers but moved on in the NBA. The list goes on about with players who've gone to Duke, and you can credit part of their skill set to what they learned under Coach K at Duke, and I think that's very important and sometimes overlooked when you're considering greatest coach. A lot of people and same goes for Gino. Look at the players he's had: Maya Moore, Sue Bird. what's her name?
Diana Taurasi.
Taurasi,
I
yeah.
mean, the list goes on and on.
And they wouldn't be the same
Right.
players they are today if they weren't coached by those players.
Right.
And people just want to look at rings, championships, but I think you have to look at player impact as well and their ability to recruit these players if you're going to talk about all-time greatest coaches.
Right, and I think Coach K, another thing is, men's college basketball is a lot more difficult, and he's going against a lot of future coaching legends. Jim Boeheim at Syracuse, Coach Cal at Kentucky, Bo Ryan at Wisconsin, Shaka Smart, who just went to Texas. The list just goes on and on. I mean,
Donovan down
at Florida. I mean, who else is out there? There are a lot more coaches out there who are excellent coaches, and Coach K has to battle with them every single year, and he seems to always come out on top most of the time. And I think that's really all about him more than his players. Even though recently he has become more, we've seen through the Duke basketball program, it's become more and more common for them to do what they do at Kentucky, the rent-a-player system, get a guy for 1 year who then leaves to declare for the NBA. But a lot of Coach K's early success up until maybe the last 4 or 5 years have been guys who have been in the program for 2, 3 years, 4 years, and he's had tons of success.
Definitely, and I think he's going to get a couple more at least.
Yeah, he's only
forward.
68. I mean, I could see him coaching for another 3, 4 years.
At least.
Yeah, at least.
So yeah, I could see him grabbing 1 or 2 more rings.
Well, transitioning from the college game to the NBA, Derrick Rose is making an imminent comeback off of that meniscus surgery. Justin, how does this impact the Eastern Conference, or does it impact the standings at all?
Well, this does impact the Eastern Conference a lot because the Chicago Bulls, while they're still a great team without Rose, I think Rose puts them over the top because I'm not saying Rose is the best point guard in the league. I'm not saying he should be the MVP. I'm saying he just completes that team because they had some solid backup with the play of Etuan Moore and Brooks, who stepped in nicely and filled the void of Rose. But you coming in, even if he only gets 17, 18 points a game, that's some good numbers for a starting point guard in the league, and he's starting to pass the ball a little better. I think his defense will be a little shaky coming off the meniscus, but Jimmy Butler's there and Joakim Noah's there also to play defense, and I just think he completes his team. You got Dunleavy in the corner, Butler, the all-around player, Gasol down low, and Joakim Noah, that defensive anchor. And I think Rose really just, as the floor general, I think he really just completes that team, and I think that definitely makes the Bulls a big threat to go far into the Eastern Conference. And I would say the top 3 teams in that conference right now, or top 3 odds to win the conference, would be either the Cavs, the Hawks, or the Chicago Bulls, now that Rose is back. But so he definitely impacts his team dramatically, and
Right.
I think the Bulls are going to have a pretty good run in this playoffs, if not make it to the finals.
See, I'm going to disagree with you there, Justin, because I think the Bulls are a better team actually without Derrick Rose, and they play better team chemistry-wise. They're a lot better without Derrick Rose because Derrick Rose, it's really not the Bulls' fault that they play better without Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose just hasn't been healthy, and frankly, the Bulls, their current players, have played with each other together more without Rose than with him. He hasn't played enough for them to form a strong team chemistry. It was really that one season where he won MVP, that he was healthy pretty much all season, and they had great team chemistry, and they went pretty far. They made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. But otherwise, he's been out of the lineup so frequently that they sort of built a strong team chemistry without him, and now he's trying to come back, and he's sort of messing with the flow of the team, and really he's turned into a glorified jump shooter. I mean, that's what his role has been lately for this Bulls team when he's played, because he just has so much rust on him right now because he hasn't played, that really we didn't get to see him start dropping those numbers like 25-7, 23-8, those kind of numbers until like 2 or 3 weeks before he tore his meniscus. So now he's going to have to shake off the rust yet again, rebuild the chemistry with the team, which is going to hurt them.
And the playoffs are starting.
The playoffs are right around the corner, so can this team turn it around in terms of team chemistry and have Rose back in and play like nothing ever happened? I don't know. I mean, with Russell Westbrook, that happened pretty quick with him and the Thunder in terms of turning around team chemistry. But I don't know if that happened with the Bulls. I frankly like them better without Rose, because they seem to play harder on defense. They're more intense. The offense runs through Noah, and I like it running through Noah because he's a triple-double center, which is unlike anything we've ever really seen. And they frankly play better because that's their staple, defense. And Derrick Rose doesn't play defense. He's a scorer. And it's all about team chemistry come playoff time and how well you play with the teammates around you. And Derrick Rose really hasn't been himself. I mean, I just remember over the summer he sort of made Team USA by default because if he didn't make the team, there was going to be a lot of uproar. But there were rumors coming out of that camp that really he wasn't really one of the best players at that camp. He wasn't doing very well. But the fact that Coach Tom Thibodeau was on the coaching staff, they were able to spin it enough to the media and constantly show that clip of him going coast to coast in that exhibition game. Everyone's like, he's back. Look at that coast-to-coast layup. It was one layup, one play, and they kept showing it over and over again to give you the impression that Derrick Rose was the Derrick Rose of MVP old.
I don't think Rose will ever return to that form.
I don't think Derrick Rose will ever be that type of player we saw in his MVP season. I don't think he trusts his body enough. And yeah, I mean, I knew it from that Team USA thing. The fact that I saw that play so many times, there were the rumors that he wasn't the best player there. He didn't really deserve to be on the team, and that Tom Thibodeau sort of snuck him onto the roster. And if he didn't make it, there would be all this uproar. And the fact that, he's a Chicago kid, the Bulls can't afford to cut him and get rid of him. They need to keep him because it's just going to, if they get rid of him, Derrick Rose's career goes down the drain. Or what if he lands on another team and he starts balling again,
Yeah.
And I just think that Derrick Rose, I think, frankly, he can come back, but it's going to have to be in a limited role because I love the way the Bulls are playing right now, and you can't mess up that chemistry so close to playoff time.
Well, Holden, to go off what you said about the playoffs right on the corner, and I know exactly what you mean because if they don't turn things around, it could be a tough one. The only good side is they are a third seed. So they will have either the Bucks, who are in 6th now,
or the Wizards,
or the Wizards if they start dropping off, or the Nets because the Nets are only a game and a half behind the Bucks. So if they win 2 games and the Bucks lose,
right,
then they can move up. So one of those 3 teams they'll play, and I think even if the team chemistry is not there, I think they could sneak past that game. But if Rose can't get it together and the team can't get it together, I can't see them getting past the Cleveland, who they'd probably meet in the second round. So that is a big factor if Rose can't step back in, or maybe hurts team chemistry.
He's going to almost have to take on a Paul George-esque role.
Yeah,
only play 12 to 15 minutes.
They said tonight he's going to get about 20 minutes, so about a little less than half the game.
Just to get the rust off, because frankly, this team, the offense is running through Noah, and the defense is the defense. And now you're throwing in a third scorer into the mix,
which is tough.
Someone's going to struggle. And Derrick Rose, for some reason, loves his jump shot as of late because he just doesn't trust his body going to the rack anymore. And you can't be jacking up shots and not making those shots.
Yeah, and you look at the year he won MVP, they didn't have an offensive player with him. Now Butler stepped up his offense game. He's going to win Most Improved Player of the Year.
Right.
They brought in Gasol, who's led the league in double-doubles this year with points and rebounds. So he doesn't need to be that 25-point scorer he is.
That team he
needs to start passing.
That team has grown in his absence so much that really he's an unneeded part in that machine. I mean, Butler is a scorer, plus being a great defender. But now
Nikola
he's
coming off the
averaging
bench.
20 points. Mirotic
coming off the bench.
But I mean, just starter-wise. Gasol averaging 18 points a game. Noah averaging a triple-double, almost triple-double every single night. Butler now averaging 20 minutes a game. Derrick Rose is the 4th scorer on that team.
And even Dunleavy, he's going to get a few shots in the corner.
He's going to come back in, Derrick Rose, and be the 4th scorer until he breaks the rust off. And, when players are 4th, 3rd scorers and you have that mentality of, hey, I was the number 1 guy, you're like, every opportunity I get, it needs to go up. The ball needs to go up because I'm not going to see the ball again for a long time because there's just so many other weapons around me that now he's turning into this jump shooter, and he's never been consistent with his J ever. And like I said, Justin, if the J ain't falling, you ain't balling. And you can't be jacking up that many shots and not making those shots.
Well said, Holden. Well said.
But moving on to the West Coast, Golden State recently just won over 60 games. The regular season, there's still a couple more games, but They recently just clinched their division. They have the best record in the NBA. And a lot of people are giving credit to Steve Kerr at the expense of former Golden State coach Mark Jackson, who also won 50 games for Golden State. So, Justin, is Steve Kerr, is this credit appropriate or is he overrated?
I think this one's tough because if you look at the Golden State Warriors, I mean, you look at their roster, I think they have the best bench in the league and arguably the best starting lineup in the league, and possibly the MVP of the league all on their team. And
their roster
and
is so
the sixth
deep.
man of the year, Murray Spates, I think he's second right now. I would give it to Lou Williams up in Toronto,
Right.
but he's second. Great bench, an MVP type player in Curry. Great supporting cast with Thompson, Thompson, Barnes. Draymond Green's up for Defensive Player of the Year this year. Bogut went healthy. So you got to give some credit to Kerr because this team hasn't always been known as a defensive team. They've been known as the Splash Brothers, jacking up threes, hitting threes, going inside to Bogut, David Lee.
But at the same time, this roster is so deep and chock full of talent that, Mr. Falcon could go in there and coach this team to win 60 games.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say too. Is at the same time, while he is doing all this, almost any other coach, I would say if Mark Jackson's on the team, I think this team they're definitely a 50 win team. Maybe not 60 because Steve Kerr has done a good job of improving the team's defense overall. But I wouldn't give all the credit to Steve Kerr. I would give some of it because he helped on the defense. But these players, they got a good team.
Right.
And you got to give credit to Curry as well. He's picked up his defensive game, and he's definitely the leader of this team. However, Kerr is the guy who calls the plays, runs the practices, so you got to give him some credit. But I don't think you need to give him as much credit as some people are giving him.
I definitely think Steve Kerr is a bit like the credit's well deserved. You win 60 games, you win 60 games. More power to you. But at the same time, all this sort of like his success has made Mark Jackson look bad. And Mark Jackson turned around that Golden State franchise. The minute he got there, the 3 years he was there, they made the playoffs in two of his, I believe, three or four seasons. They made the playoffs twice, and he really established a culture there in Golden State that was about winning. And Steve Kerr stepped in, and he just took what Mark Jackson made and what he built, and he just took it to another level. And Steve Kerr's been smart. I mean, he brought in Alvin Gentry, who's the associate head coach, who's had over 5 years of NBA head coaching experience under his belt. So for a guy inexperienced like Steve Kerr, he brings in another guy to sort of help him out, which I thought was a smart move on Steve Kerr's. That's why he took less money so they could hire Alvin Gentry and pay him. That was a smart move. And you look at this talent, they're all young players. I mean, Iguodala is like only 30 or 31, and David Lee's like 32. I mean, they're young. And to have another year of development and growth for all those players to improve. Klay Thompson's only 23. Steph Curry's only like 24, 25. So to have another year to develop and improve as a player, Steve Kerr is reaping the benefits of that development. I think Mark Jackson would have had a similar season if he was still there. I think the only difference is Steve Kerr has simplified the offense, integrated more passing and less isolation on the offensive end of the floor because they were a good defensive team with Mark Jackson, and they're still a good defensive team with Steve Kerr. He's just simplified the offense and made it better, more team-oriented, and they're reaping the benefits of that. They're number one offensive efficiency and number one in defensive efficiency. Won over 60 games, clinched the division for the first time in a long time for Golden State history. So I would definitely give a lot of credit to Kerr, but I'll validate that credit once he gets to the postseason and we see what he does in the postseason, because that's where coaching truly makes a difference.
Exactly. If this team loses first. I don't think they'll lose first round, but I would think with this team, I don't even think
they can make it to the conference finals.
I don't think they should even lose in the second round, especially after winning. I think they need to
go
Western Conference Finals or above if this season is going to be successful. I don't think you should fire Kerr if they lose in the second round.
No,
but you definitely maybe have to reconsider some things, and
they need to make it to the finals.
The Western Conference Finals. Yes, but it's going to be a tough road. I mean, we'll talk about it later in the show, but the Spurs have been playing very well as of late.
Right.
And the New Orleans Pelicans, with a big win over them last night,
the Brown
moving to 8th seed, and that would be the 1-8 matchup. I don't think the Warriors are going to lose like that in a playoff game, but who knows? If Drew Holiday's coming back.
The Warriors definitely, it's been impressive to see because they really have nothing to fight for in terms of the regular season because they're going to have the number 1 seed, and they're still playing hard and finishing out teams instead of kind of resting players and taking your foot off the gas. Steve Kerr has kept these guys motivated to keep winning and winning and winning. But now, like you said, Justin, we need to see what he does in the playoffs because that's where coaching, that's where you make your money, that's where you make your bread as a coach.
And that's part of the reason why Mark Jackson got fired.
Right.
They lost early to the Nuggets.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
The Clippers.
They beat the Nuggets and then they lost to the Clippers.
Yeah.
And they lost in second round. So I guess the team wanted to just move in a different direction. They didn't feel like they maybe felt like getting a new coach could definitely put them over the top. And
they have one of the best rosters in the NBA. A roster built for the playoffs in terms of that bench talent. And they just needed Mark Jackson. He was very, stubborn about his philosophies and what he was doing. He fired his assistant coaches and he hired some questionable people to be on his staff. And he only played certain players, had his certain rotations, wasn't really open to new ideas. Very old school, and that's not a bad thing because he's won 50 games. But there needs to be a new voice in that locker room, and Steve Kerr came in, simplified things, sort of, I feel like, gave more freedom to the players, and frankly, it's paid off. But anyways, moving on to our next question, who is the biggest threat, in your opinion, to the Warriors, Justin?
Obviously, the Western Conference is so stacked.
Right.
But I like what the San Antonio Spurs are doing right now. I know everybody likes to jump on the Spurs bandwagon, especially now that they're on an 8-game win streak after a win last night. But I like what they're doing right now. Kawhi Leonard's been the leader of the team on the offensive end. Tony Parker's been improving after what has been, I would say, one of his worst seasons of his career this year. Tim Duncan, he's up for Defensive Player of the Year, and he's almost 40 years old, so he's been playing great. The only problem is with the Spurs, I don't think they're as deep as previous years, just because I don't think Patty Mills and Bellinelli have been playing up to the standards that they were previous years.
Healthy.
Yeah, they haven't been healthy, and they need to get back into the rotation. That's the only thing that I would think would keep the Spurs down. But also, I really like the Houston Rockets this year a lot. James Harden is, in my opinion, is the clear-cut MVP. People have Curry over him. I don't see that at all. I think it's definitely James Harden. And now you got Dwight Howard getting into the rotation. Josh Smith has been picking up his game as of late, starting at that power forward position. And then they got Terrence Jones coming back off the injury. They got a great bench with Corey Brewer there. And then either Terrence Jones or Josh Smith, whoever does come off the bench. The only downside with them is Patrick Beverley will miss the season with wrist surgery. So they'll have to have Pablo Prigioni start at the 1, who is a 38-year-old.
Terry, the Jet, he's starting right now at the point.
The Jet, I would say the Jet or Prigioni, who are both late 30s, and I don't think should be the starting point guard on a championship team.
Exactly.
But James Harden can run the point for you as well. Trevor Reeves is there to play D. I really do like the Rockets out west. So I would say the Rockets or Spurs, 2 Texas teams. And even the Mavericks, the state of Texas will be a big threat to the Warriors, but I would say the Spurs and the Rockets have the slight advantage over the Mavs as far as threatening the Warriors to win that Western Conference.
Right. Well, in my opinion, I think anyone in that 8 seed spot that gets matched up with Golden State in the first round will be their biggest challenge to overcome, whether it be the Thunder or the Pelicans. Both teams are chock full of talent that can really give
and really
Golden
have nothing
State
to lose.
a run for their money, and they have nothing to lose because when you're in that 8 seed, no one has high expectations for you to go far in the playoffs, so you can play with abandon and sort of you can relax and play with that freedom and just enjoy the game, and you have nothing to lose. And and a lot of these guys, they're competitive. They don't mind being the spoiler. And when you're going up against a team like Golden State that's just had so much success in the regular season, they're almost unanimous favorites to make it to the Western Conference Finals and win the finals. They're the number 1 team in the NBA right now. They're number 1 in offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency. They got an MVP candidate in Stephen Curry. They have so much talent, and they've had so much success that the expectations are incredibly high for Golden State that they have everything to lose. And when you're playing with that sort of anxiety or that sort of level of expectation and stress, I mean, that I would love to be an 8 seed and go up against a team like that. And I think that's what teams like the Thunder or the Pelicans are thinking about, that they have a chance because they could expose a mental weakness in Golden State, and they have nothing to lose on their end.
Exactly, and like I said, I think, honestly, every team in the Western Conference is a great team, and it's going to be a tough matchup. But I did like what you say about the Pelicans there. Nothing to lose. Hey, if Anthony Davis goes off and drops 40 points a night with 15 boards, 8 blocks, maybe they could grab a couple games or possibly the series. And if Drew Holiday comes back, Evans playing well, it's going to be
a
tough.
challenge for them because he is a true dominant big man. And you look at Golden State, Bogut has health concerns. I mean, he's always in and out of the lineup. David Lee is coming off the bench.
And he's not going to be able to guard.
He's not going to be able to guard Davis.
They're going to have to throw Draymond Green on him, who's only 6'8".
Who's a Defense Player of the Year. He's only 6'8", and he's really more like a stretch kind of 4. I don't think he could really handle Anthony Davis down on the low block. So
it'll be tough.
I think Anthony Davis could be a one-man wrecking team against Golden State.
And another guy, Eric Gordon, who...
They have a lot of talent.
Yeah, he's a scoring machine. Tyreek Evans is an all-around great player as well.
It's really funny because the Western Conference is already so talented as it is. But a lot of these teams can be even better because, frankly, some of their better players have been out injured and haven't been healthy the entire season. So
Kevin Durant's playing.
Drew Holiday,
Kobe.
The list goes on and on. There's so many talented players who have been in and out of their lineups that if the Western Conference was 100% healthy,
it'd be tough for the Warriors.
Oh my God, the Warriors would have to probably go through.
Tell you right now, these are
7-game series.
These playoffs I'm looking forward to these playoffs more than I have in any previous season because the West is just the first round can be the equivalent of any Western Conference Finals.
The first round could take a month and a half to get over.
And even the East too. I mean, the Heat adding guys like Dragic.
Right.
The Bucks are a solid team, so it's not going to be a bad.
I think the Heat. I think the Eastern Conference. There'll be some sweeps, and we'll get through the playoffs pretty quick in the East. But the West, I think, like last year, we'll have 7-game series out the wazoo, and it's going to take forever.
Which could benefit a team like the Bulls or Cavs, who, let's say they
get a lot of time.
They get to the finals pretty easily, aside from maybe the Eastern Conference Finals.
And they have time to
They might be playing a team that just played,
maybe 3 7-game series
20
before
games.
getting to you. Yeah,
20 straight games in a playoff atmosphere, and then you got to play the Cavs or Bulls. It's going to be it'll be an advantage for whoever wins the East.
Right.
But as far as Golden State goes, sure they have the advantage because they have home court and they're so good at home. But it's going to be a tough one.
But moving on to our next question, transitioning into the NFL, switching gears here. Adrian Peterson recently met with Roger Goodell in New York City. Reinstatement for AP is likely imminent, but AP has voiced concerns through his agent that he does not want to remain in Minnesota. So, Justin, what should happen with AP?
Adrian Peterson needs to go to a team like the Dallas Cowboys where he wants to play. He's going to be comfortable. The city wants him there to play. If I were him, Minnesota's the last place I want to see him go. The team's not going anywhere anytime soon. If anything, he's going to put them in the Goldilocks zone because they'll win more games than they would without him. And they're not a playoff team. They'll win 6 games, and they'll maybe they're not going to get a first overall pick. So they're in the Goldilocks zone, just like the Hawks were before. I think you need to cut ties with him, start fresh. You got Mike Wallace, a young quarterback as well, with Teddy Bridgewater, and grab some draft picks and just move for the future. Let Adrian Peterson go. He's not going to do much. He's not going to make this team a championship team. And for all we know, he gets hurt week 2. So I just say go to the Cowboys or a team like that wants him, that Adrian Peterson's going to be happy in.
That has a chance to make a deep run.
I would say make it a mutual agreement. And as a fan watching the sport, I don't want to see Peterson on the Vikings. I'm sure Vikings fans want him there. But he doesn't do anything for the team. They're not any step closer to winning a championship with Peterson there.
And that's the problem because the Vikings want him back because they know what kind of talent he is.
Oh, sure, yeah.
They know how many tickets he sells to the fans. The Vikings want him back because he is the face of the franchise, whether they like it or not. And he's the cash cow. and they would win more games than without it, and it's all about winning. But like you said, really, you look at that Minnesota roster, he's one of the oldest players on the team. They've pretty much started fresh. I mean, Adrian Peterson has been through 3 or 4 coaches by now. Definitely 3 that I can think of, with Fraser, Childress, and now Zimmer. He's been through 3 coaches already. I think he needs to go to a place like Dallas. He lives in Texas during the offseason. I mean, it would be a likely move. Tony Romo just restructured his deal to free up like $13 million
and
in
believe
cap
it or
space.
not, Tony Romo promised Okafor from Duke that if you win a national title, I'll win a Super Bowl this year. He promised Okafor that. So,
right. I mean, he just restructured his deal to free up $13 million. Now you could argue that $13 million will be used to address weaknesses on the defense or other like the offensive line or other areas, and not the running back position. That's what's been coming out of the Cowboys camp so far. But I think $13 million is a pretty specific figure. That's what Adrian Peterson was making in Minnesota. So if the Vikings cut him, and frankly, I think he's making too much for a running back these days. Frankly, being 30 years old and not having played since 2 seasons ago, I think it would be a logical move for him to come to Dallas on a fairly, maybe $5 million, $4 million, and have 2 more stud years and then ride off into the sunset. Give yourself the best chance to win a Super Bowl, and Dallas is one of those teams that can make a run.
Not.
And Minnesota is definitely not in a division with Aaron Rodgers and the Bears, and definitely the Lions with Calvin Johnson and Matt Stafford. And you're not going to go anywhere with the Vikings. You need to go to a relatively weaker division.
And a good team.
And a good team, and I think Dallas has that.
Definitely, Holden. I think that would be the best case scenario for him. And if he was 26, maybe stay with them and grow. But 30, you need to go to a team that's ready to win right now.
Right. But
I have some topics over here if you want to.
Fire away, Justin.
So Holden, obviously we talked about the NCAA tournament coming to an end with Duke taking it. But let me get your top NBA prospect from entering the draft, whether it be Okafor, Towns from Kentucky, Moutier over from China, Winslow, who in a recent report has some people think that he's better than Okafor as an NBA prospect. Just give me your top guy.
I consider the Chinese league equivalent to the D League, because I have seen players like Andre Blatch go over to China. And I recently looked this up. The dude was averaging triple-double numbers on a nightly basis, and it was something like 20-plus points, 15-plus rebounds, and like 3-plus blocks and 10-plus assists. I mean, it was just crazy. And then you look at the D League numbers, and you see guys who you can't play on the pro level, average like 30 points a night and 20 rebounds. I mean, it's just insane. And Andre Blatch, we know in the NBA, he has like career averages of like 11 points and 6 rebounds a game.
So he can play in the NBA.
And he can ball in China. And so I really don't consider Moutier to be the number 1 prospect. He's definitely up there. But look, he only played 10 games in China. Okay, he hasn't played basketball in a long time. He had an ankle injury that cut his season short, so there are some injury concerns. He put up really good numbers in China. But how does that translate to the NBA, especially after seeing a guy like Andre Blatch and what he did in China versus the NBA? He hasn't, been a stud in the NBA either. So I'm a little wary on Moutier and guys like Brandon Jennings, in the past who decided to play overseas instead of playing in college. I think playing in college is the most competitive league before the NBA and the best way to measure a player prior to, drafting a player. And then you look at Jahlil Okafor. I mean, he came up small in the postseason. I mean, yes, Duke won, but in the championship game, he had 4 fouls, didn't play really barely the entire game, only played in the last couple minutes to really cinch the deal. Otherwise, he was on the bench. He was in foul trouble. Otherwise, I mean, in the Final Four, he wasn't dominant, and in the tournament, I believe the first 2 games he was a stud, but those were against schools like Robert Morris. I mean, he put up huge numbers. Otherwise, this guy really didn't show up in the NCAA tournament. And then regular season-wise, he dominated, but I'm a little leery about him because, yes, he can average 20 points a game, I think, in the pros, but rebounding-wise, he only averaged 6 rebounds a game at Duke. which concerns me for a guy who's 7 feet tall. I don't think he plays up to his size, which is a concern for me when you're drafting a big man, because I want him to be a double-double kind of guy, and he only averaged 6 rebounds at Duke, so that's a bit of a red flag. And then you look at Karl Anthony Towns, I think he's very raw. I look at him like I looked at Andrew Wiggins, more of an athlete than a basketball player, and he only played in limited minutes at Kentucky, so we really never got to see how a full basketball game would affect Towns and how Towns would have an effect on a full 48 minutes, or 40 minutes, sorry. So that's another question mark with him. I think all these prospects have question marks, and really the only safe prospect for me is Justice Winslow, who's a McDonald's All-American for Duke this year. This guy at 6'6" can play the 2 or the 3, even the 4. Averaged 7 rebounds a game as a small forward, which is legit. He reminds me of a Lance Stevenson.
Or a Jimmy Butler type player.
Yeah, in terms of being that aggressive player, because he can lock you up on the defensive end of the floor, and he can use his athleticism to score points. And he loves to get to the rim, and he loves that physical contact like Lance Stevenson does, and he competes like him too. So I love Justin Winslow. He's my favorite top prospect in the draft. But in terms of number one, I think you can't teach 7 feet. So Jahlil Okafor will probably be the number one pick.
Yeah, Holden, coming into the season, I saw Okafor being the number one. I also saw Cliff Alexander from Kansas, but he had some issues with
that eligibility issue.
Yeah, and couldn't play, so he's going to stay another year at Kansas. We'll see what he does in the future. But in the recent mock draft, they have Towns 1, Okafor 2, D'Angelo Russell, Ohio State, who had a good tournament at 3, Moody at 4, Winslow 5, and then other guys, Trey Lyles 7 from Kentucky, and Claulie Stein 10.
Thing about those Kentucky guys is all of them
didn't play a lot of minutes.
20 to 25 minutes a game. So we really never got to see their full impact on a game across 40 minutes or the impact of playing 40 minutes on them. So that makes me question each Kentucky guy, because Claulie Stein was a second round to undrafted guy at 7 feet his freshman and sophomore year, and now all of a sudden he's a lottery
10 pick. Yeah.
So and this was the first season he played under 30 minutes a game, so that's a bit of a concern for me.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at this though, for example, a lot of people say, "Oh, well, let's." And if Jeremy's prediction is right, because the NBA draft lottery is rigged according to Jeremy, then the Knicks are going to get the first pick, right?
And they're going to get a big man.
So let's say they take Okafor, right?
Ewing. Yeah.
What is that team doing if they take Okafor? What are they doing for defense? So they're going to start Okafor at the 5 and and Melo's going to play the 4. Who's playing defense down low?
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
The team, they're going to get destroyed in the paint. Sure, their offense is going to be great because you got a guy like Okafor down low.
That's going to be their defense to outscore teams.
Yeah, they're going to have to outscore teams, but a lot of times that won't do much moving into the Eastern Conference Finals and then obviously into the Finals if they want to be a legitimate team. So I think you have to take Towns if you're the New York Knicks. I like Okafor, as I think he'll have a better overall career than Towns, but I think Towns for the Knicks, and I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar and Towns is going to be a bust. I think they're both going to be very good players.
I think Towns is extremely raw.
He's a great player, and he plays defense, and he's an inch taller and a little bigger than Okafor, and I think he'd help the Knicks a little more because Melo at the 4 he's gonna be your scorer, and Towns can score, but he's gonna play defense and be that the bruiser, grab rebounds, and that'll be a nice compliment to Carmelo Anthony at the 4.
And take pressure off Melo, because now Melo can just focus on one thing, getting to the
scoring.
basket and scoring buckets, and then you got Towns behind you protecting the rim. But I think Okafor would be a great choice as well.
You can't go wrong with either guy, obviously.
Go wrong with the guy, and frankly, Okafor has been a full-time starter at Duke. Whereas Towns, we've never really. Yes, he's a great defender, but when have we ever seen him play almost an entire game and be that, that defensive anchor? We've only seen him be the defensive anchor for a maximum of 30 minutes a game.
Yeah, and so going down the list, we got Okafor 2, Minnesota. Now this is just a mock draft. After the lottery, things could change, but I think let's say he goes to Minnesota. That's a very good move. I mean, you got Wiggins there to play D. However. And I think he would just fit in there because they need offense. He could work under Nikola Pekovic, who's a similar type player, not as good around the hoop, but he's a a big-bodied guy, 6'11", and then D'Angelo Russell to Philadelphia. I don't really like this pick here. If this mock draft is correct, I think you take Moutier if you're Philadelphia because they need a point guard. Trading Carter Williams,
so
I think
either
he's
him or
separated.
D'Angelo Russell, and frankly, I would take Russell because he's played in college and Moutier hasn't.
Yeah, but I like Russell more as a shooting guard, but he could play point guard, and if they could convert him,
he was a point guard at Ohio State, and frankly, they need a scorer type guard and not
So
a
you
guy
think he
who
would
can
fit in better
distribute
than
because
Moutier?
we saw Carter Williams. Carter Williams is more of a pass first kind of guy,
And he would fit nice with Embiid and Noel down low.
Right, that didn't really work with guy in Philadelphia. So now I think you go with the scoring type guard, and especially when you have Embiid and Nerlens Noel, all these big men who can finish at the rim.
And Holden, I really like what you said. Justice Winslow is a great player. He reminds me a lot of Jimmy Butler.
He reminds me of Jimmy Butler. He
Lance
reminds me of Lance Stevenson.
A guy like maybe a young Gerald Wallace when he was on the crash, as they used to call him. Aggressive player. He'll lock you up. He did a good job guarding, what's his name?
Kaminsky?
No, not Kaminsky.
Decker.
No, the shooting, the small forward, Nigel Hayes.
Nigel Hayes.
And a good job on Nigel Hayes. That was a great matchup. But I think, and he's projected to go to the Magic with the 5th pick. So they'd have a lineup of Alfred Payton, Victor Oladipo, Justice Winslow, somebody at the 4, whether it be Vucevic at the 5, who's had a breakout year this year,
right.
and Aaron Gordon, Channing Frye.
They can put Tobias Harris at the 4.
Tobias Harris slides to the 4. That's a great team moving forward. And in that weaker Eastern Conference, I think that'd be a great pickup for them. So I would, and I don't want to necessarily say a top draft prospect. I just like when guys fall into a good situation. Not necessarily like Winslow, for example. Maybe I think he's the best player, but I'd rather see him go to a team like the Magic than the Knicks.
Draft's weird because there needs to be correct fits. Guys need to fall into correct situations to be great players. Where I think in the NFL, they try to do what the NBA does and just get the right guy for their system.
But a lot of times you just need just a talented guy.
A lot of times you just need to pick the best football player available, and you'll figure it out.
That's not necessarily true.
Where a lot of teams who have struck out with first-round picks are because they're picking guys because they need them upon need. They draft upon need and not just picking the best guy out there.
Yeah,
but whereas in the NBA, it's vice versa. I think you really need to pick based on need.
So yeah, people are like, well, why did you pass up on that guy? Well, if we draft Okafor from the Knicks, the defense is going to be good. Take Towns. If I'm the Magic, I want a guy like Justice Winslow because they're set with their backcourt. Peyton and Victor Oladipo, a good backcourt moving future.
The 4 for the past
and he can play the 4, and then you got a guy to lock up. Not that he's going to lock up LeBron, but to guard guys like LeBron, guard guys like Melo, and that's a good team moving forward. And I would say I would like Winslow the best, but as far as like pure number 1 potential, I would go with either Okafor or Towns, and that would be again who needs what. But Holden, moving back to the NBA. Just keeping it basketball, moving to the NBA. These are the standings right now. Starting at 7th, Brooklyn's in 7th, Boston's in 8th, Miami's in 9th, Indiana's in 10th, and Charlotte's in 11th. All separated by 3 games. Right. Holden, what 2 teams make the playoffs?
I think the Celtics make it because since the All-Star break, Brad Stevens has done an excellent job with pretty much a roster where you really don't know anyone on this team. Everyone's been a career revival. Everyone on that Boston Celtics roster has had a career revival under Brad Stevens, and since the All-Star break, they have been on a tear throughout the Eastern Conference. So I definitely think they're going to end the season on a high note. They're going to be the hottest team in the Eastern Conference, which doesn't really say a lot about the Eastern Conference, but I think they pretty much locked up the 8th or 7th seed, in my opinion. Brooklyn, I think they're going to get bounced right out of the first round because, frankly, they're just too old. And Darren Williams is 30 years old, but he looks like he's 38. I mean, he just looks like
they make the playoffs?
He just looks like he's been to McDonald's too many times. He's the fattest point guard I've ever seen in my life, especially, and he's been a shell of himself since his days in Utah when he was averaging 23 points and 11 assists a game. Yeah, he was an animal, and now he's just a fat animal. Otherwise, you look at this Eastern Conference, a lot of the teams have kind of sizzled out that started out the season on fire. Atlanta's still hot. I mean, they've maintained their form throughout the season. They've won 58 games so far. They were 46-17, I believe, at the All-Star break, and now they're 50-something and 19. So they've only lost 2 games since the All-Star break, which is pretty darn good. And they're balling right now. I think they could potentially give the Cavs or the Bulls a run for their money and make it to the finals, no doubt. Otherwise, you look at the rest of these teams. Toronto's kind of fallen off since the All-Star break.
The Wizards.
The
we
Wizards
talked about
have
them last
fallen off tremendously since the All-Star break. I think they need to fire their coach and get a guy like Mark Jackson or some credible coach, because I think that team's one coach away from being a contender again for an NBA championship. Otherwise, the Eastern Conference is getting better. It's not like the West, though, for sure. But they're getting better.
Yeah, with these five teams fighting for those 2 playoff spots, I definitely think Brooklyn's going to secure it. They're in 7th now, leading those 5 teams in standings, and they're on a roll. Brook Lopez has been playing out of his mind lately. Won Eastern Conference Player of the Month last month, and right now I think Indiana and Charlotte, I think they're out of it. I mean, even the return of Paul George, I don't think that could put them over the top. He's not going to jump into the superstar in the making he was 2 years ago.
They supplant him as a full-time starter,
and
he starts
I don't think
like
they want to do that
again.
because even if you make the 8 seed, it's going to be tough to even make a run. So I don't think that they risk it. And then the Hornets, the Lance Stevenson thing didn't work out. Kemba's been injured. Al Jefferson's been trying to pick it up, but he really hasn't been. He's been doing a lot, but it's not enough for the team. So I think it's going to come down between Boston and Miami. And Holden, as you mentioned, Boston's playing great. Evan Turner's picked it up a lot. But Miami, I like what they're doing. Dragic, however, I think Boston takes this and gets that 8 seed.
Miami, I totally forgot about Miami and the fact that they were still sort of in it.
And if Bosh was healthy, they'd definitely be in
Bosh
there.
has been out with the blood clots, okay? You don't have Bosh, who's averaging 21-7, your number 1 scorer. Dwayne Wade has been in and out of the lineup, and ever since LeBron got there,
and even Whiteside's been hurt a lot this year. Dwayne
Wade has played fewer and fewer games since LeBron's first year in Miami. And look, he's still dropping good numbers, but I don't think come playoff time he's going to be at 100% ready for you to ball. And Whiteside, this guy is like one of the most talented players I've ever seen in terms of big men, but it's obviously all mental because he's doing his off the court issues, and he's just been inconsistent. I think he's up there in technical fouls in the league. Like, he just has some attitude issues that if he gets those resolved, I think the Heat can go far in the playoffs. But I mean, Miami, I just don't think they have enough players. Like, they just don't have enough talented players.
Yeah, they had like 2 6'8" guys down power forward center. They don't have depth.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem with a team that's trying to compete. And if you look at Boston, I think they're going to get in. That's one team that could beat the Hawks, I think. Or that could really scare the Hawks a little bit, because the Hawks are a great team, and I know my brother's a Hawks fan, but and the Hawks I think will beat the Celtics. But the Celtics are young. They got some experienced guys like Isaiah Thomas, and Evan Turner's a good player, and they have a young, quick team. And the Hawks, they play a more traditional style of basketball, similar to the Spurs. And I think I think the Celtics could steal a couple games and possibly the series if they. If Isaiah Thomas comes off the bench and drops 40 one game or something, or Turner picks up another triple-double, and Marcus Smart starts playing well.
The Cavs are also surging right now. Yeah. We expected them, obviously, to be at this point in the season, but I think they have one of the deepest benches in the East, without a doubt. I think Timothy Mozgov can make an argument for most improved player in the NBA, the numbers he's putting up for the Cavs. He plays so hard for that team, obviously having a connection with Coach Blatt, having played for him for the Russian national team. But this guy is putting up really good numbers. I mean, we always knew his name because he was always the guy getting dunked on and posterized, but now he's getting known. He's
then again, he is on the team with
talents.
LeBron, who makes everybody better around him.
Right, but I mean, hey, look, he's putting up good numbers.
I think the most improved player is no doubt Jimmy Butler, though.
Oh yeah, I think he'll get it, but I think Mozgov can make the short list.
Oh, definitely, and like I said, the Eastern Conference playoffs are going to be interesting this year. So let's say the Boston plays the Hawks. It's going to be a decent series, a quick team, young quick team versus an older traditional team. And then the Cavs Nets, I think the Cavs will take that pretty easily.
Right.
And then you look at, let's say, Bulls Bucks.
Exactly.
If Derrick Rose is trying to fit in, I think the Bucks will make an interesting series. They take that one. And then Toronto and the Wizards, that'll be a good series. I think that goes 7 games because both teams are kind of – those are the 2 teams you mentioned as falling off. And I would think the Wizards would ultimately take that. So I think it's going to be a good series, but holding the West will be amazing this year.
Yeah,
I cannot wait for the Western Conference playoffs.
Last year, I was not interested at the playoffs at all because I frankly got so sick of LeBron in Miami. I just wanted something different. And this year, there's a lot of new faces on new teams, and the playoffs have really interested me because for the last couple of years, it's always been like the same 8 teams in the playoffs, and now you have a couple new teams in the playoffs.
Pelicans,
the Celtics, the Pelicans, the Thunder,
the
an
Bucks.
8 seed. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. I'm looking. The Spurs are finally not like a number 1 seed for like 5.
They're gonna have to start playing from behind. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's gonna be a good run, but yeah, I mean, it's just that's why I like the NBA because. Obviously, it's not the NCAA tournament where a 16 seed could technically win the whole thing.
Right.
But you're going to see some good
right.
games. You're going to see 8 seeds with nothing to lose come out and play, and then the Western Conference and Eastern Conference finals. Those are where the fun happens because
exactly.
2 teams trying to prove they're the best team in the conference.
I think that's why there's love for both the tournament and the playoffs because the playoffs it's really truly about the better team and the better team wins out over 7 games. But in the tournament, I mean, it's just about catching that really good team off.
Having an off night. Maybe a guy's a little sick or something under the weather and they lose.
Or you just have a great shooting night yourself as a team.
And you saw what happened with Florida. That's what I did. That's the one thing I don't like about the tournament. I mean, everybody loves this underdog story, but Georgetown was 100% the better team over Florida Gulf Coast. And Florida Gulf Coast, they hit a couple lobs, team gets fired up, Georgetown struggles and they win.
Right. I think everyone is 0-0 in the tournament, and anyone can beat everybody. And anyone can beat anyone, and all these teams know that.
Yeah.
So it's really about who's going to make more shots, me or you, or am I going to catch you on an off night and make it out?
And that's what I like about the NBA playoffs because I think the best team is crowned. You can't get lucky for 4 straight games and win a series.
Right.
It's going to be the better team coming out on top, especially you have to win 4 series to win it all. So that's why I like the NBA playoffs. And it's 7 games. The teams know each other, and then when you see, I can't wait to see Golden State Clippers. That's a possible second round matchup. And you've seen what happens when either team travels to the opposite arena.
Exactly.
There's going to be some.
Quickly, we got 2 minutes to go here. Who is your coach of the year?
Mike Budenholzer on the Hawks because people predicted them to be a playoff team. Clearly, nobody predicted them to have this great of a season, and he's definitely the driving force behind that because they don't have a superstar in that team. He's like a Greg Popovich who combines the talent of all the team and knows what he's doing out there collectively, winning games, and I'm going to give it to him.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to Steve Kerr. You're number 1 in offense. You're number 1 in defense. You have the best record in the league.
MVP on your team,
possibly. You have an MVP
possibly.
candidate on your team. I think Steve Kerr is probably going to be coach
if it was
of the year.
Eastern, Western. If it was like Western Conference Coach of the Year, I'm giving it to Kerr.
Right.
If
well, that's
Eastern,
how sort of like the All-Star game was. And so it was Budenholzer and Kerr, and now those guys are going to meet up in the final.
And we'll see who wins because they're both the 1 seeds.
Yeah, they're both the 1
seeds.
seeds.
And it's too bad you couldn't see till the end of the playoffs, and it's tough. You can't be like, oh, well, you had a better season, but hey, you had a better team as well. It's a tough one. I mean,
exactly.
But I like to give it to the Hawks because they don't have that superstar that Steve Kerr has on his team.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the playoffs and who wins all these awards.
Yeah, well, next week we'll probably do our full bracket. We'll have the Eastern Conference on one side, Western Conference.
Yeah.
Jeremy might be here, maybe not. We'll do a.
Well, we don't know. He's away on.
We'll fill out our own bracket.
On this trip. He's going to be gone next week too, visiting colleges and finding out what college wants him to possibly be on the disc golf team, being recruited Division I athlete for disc golf. Jeremy.
And he'll also be a part of the SportsTalk club.
Right. I mean, Jeremy's got a lot of offers out there for him. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Jeremy is a sick disc golf player. Division I bound. Division I bound.
Hashtag Division I bound.
Yeah, I mean, so it's crazy. Jeremy, best of luck. He's visiting some West Coast schools. Possibly could decide on maybe spending the next 4 years in Arizona or California. So, but it's been a great addition.
He's going to visit Nick out in California.
It's been a great edition of Sports Talk. I'm Holden Pirelli.
And I'm Justin Palolo.
We'll see you next week.
It's staticky though.